And while we do, just really see if you can settle yourselves into this island of time. So now that we've warmed up our voices a little bit, let's just take a moment to take some breaths and really for this Kabbalat Shabbat service, this receiving of Shabbat service, to open ourselves, make space in ourselves spiritually, emotionally, and even physically by taking some deep breaths. Maybe we roll our shoulders back a bit to make some physical space. Whatever we've been holding from the week that has passed, so much might be in us, swirling in our individual lives, our communal lives, whatever is in us, just a time to let go and enter into spaciousness. I really invite you to do that and use the breath as a tool to do that, and just to ground yourself. So, as some of you know, I just returned from Israel early in the week, where I had been for 2 weeks. And I still feel like I need that grounding to remember where I am, and to be back in this space and back with this community. I honor that by just taking a breath and really coming into presence here. And we'll talk more about this later, but we're at a really special time in the month of Av. A week ago was Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, a very, very intense day of mourning in the Jewish calendar. And today is Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av, and it is a day that is all about love and rejoicing, and thinking about the ways in which we are deeply connected in love with one another. So if you read Rabbi Jen's Shabbat message, you know more about it. If you didn't, you'll read it later, and we'll say a little bit more about it later. We might even have some special Jewish Valentine's Day treats for you in a little bit. So we're going to begin with candle lighting, and I'm going to invite Rabbi Jen to light the candles. Since she's still new to our community, it feels appropriate to honor her with candle lighting. But if any of you here tonight or out there who will be with us in person at any point would like the honor of candle lighting, if you have a special simcha coming up or a reason you'd like to do the honor of candle lighting, please do let us know. So we'll be singing the blessing on page 2. Baruch. Sorry. Trick matches. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We'll turn to Shalom Aleichem on page 24. And because we've moved out of a mourning period in the Jewish calendar into this really rather joyful day of Tu B'Av, we thought we'd do a very upbeat version of Shalom Aleichem as we welcome the angels of peace.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMelachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Yairei Barchuni, L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzechem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzechem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
We're going to turn to page 13 and do the Nava Tehillah version of a bit of Psalm 96, Ya'aloz Sadai, that many of you are becoming familiar with by now. But as with anything, even if you're not familiar, please lend your voice or clap or participate in any way in which you're comfortable. We'll be singing from 4 lines up in the Hebrew and the transliteration on 13.
Ya'aloz Sadai, Bechol Asher Bo Ya'aloz Sadai. Ay, 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 Ya'aloz Sadai, Bechol Asher Bo Ya'aloz Sadai. Ay, 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 Az Yiranenu Kol Atzei Yar, Az Yiranenu Kol Atzei Yar, Az Yiranenu Kol Atzei Yar, Az Yiranenu Kol Atzei Yar. Ya'aloz Sadai, Bechol Asher Bo Ya'aloz Sadai. Ay, 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 Ya'aloz Sadai, Bechol Asher Bo Ya'aloz Sadai. Ay, 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 Az Yiranenu Kol Atzei Yar, Az Yiranenu Kol Atzei Yar, Az Yiranenu Kol Atzei Yar, Az Yiranenu Kol Atzei Yar. Ya'aloz Sadai, Bechol Asher Bo Ya'aloz Sadai. Ay, 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 Ya'aloz Sadai, Bechol Asher Bo Ya'aloz Sadai. Ay, 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 ay.
Going to turn to page 14 for another psalm. All of these psalms chosen by the Kabbalists, the mystics of the north of Israel. And when I was in Israel, I spent some time in Tzfat, in the north of Israel. And it really was the birthplace of this service, Kabbalat Shabbat. And just like in any normal town, we came across a billboard with all the words of Lecha Dodi written on it, as well as Yedid Nefesh, another beautiful medieval poem in honor of Shabbat. So, just your typical town. No, amazing, right? So lots more to say about that, but we're going to sing Or Zarua. This is a new version. It has 3 parts to it. Join in as you can, as you want to. And this is a beautiful version coming from Psalm 97. And I'm going to tell you where to find the words. Page 14. Or Zarua is the final stanza at the bottom of the page.
Yum biddy bum bum biddy bum bum diddy 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 bum
After the Psalms, of which the Kabbalists arranged 7 for the ritual of Kabbalat Shabbat, 1 representing every day of the week, we reach Lecha Dodi, the demarcation between what was this past week and what will be Shabbat. It invokes this image of a bride or a queen, which I'm particularly partial to. And after reciting the 4 verses 1 to 5, we rise for verse 9, the very last verse, and face the doors as we might at a wedding, to body, mind, and spirit welcome all that Shabbat has to offer us. We open, the Kabbalists would go out on the edge of the cliffs in northern Israel right at sunset and open their arms wide to receive. And while we might be in here and sunset might not be for a little while yet, we nonetheless embody that openness to receiving as our ancestors did. So Lecha Dodi can be found on page 20.
שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, ושמו תפארת והילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, שבת מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת מקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה. מקדם לשוחה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, שבת לקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי. אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת מקבלה. Please rise. בואי ושלום עטרת בלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה. תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת מקבלה.
One more psalm that the Kabbalists inserted after Lecha Dodi is Psalm 92. This psalm, and we can be seated, this psalm specifically identifies itself as a shir leyom HaShabbat, a song, same word as poem, but a song, a shir specifically for Shabbat. And embedded within that psalm are the words, Ma gadlu ma'asecha Adonai me'od amku machshavotecha. How amazing is your creation, Adonai. Your thoughts are incredibly deep. So we assert that we couldn't possibly understand the workings of this great big universe. Those images from the Hubble Space Telescope certainly remind us of how little we can understand, no matter how much science we know. So on Shabbat, we step back. We just step back and say, wow, really amazing. We zoom out. And so I invite you to do that with us with this round, Ma gadlu ma'asecha ya. We're on page 22, just above the indented lines, 4 lines up from there. Ma gadlu ma'asecha Adonai. But instead of Adonai, we're going to call Adonai by Adonai's nicknames, one of them, Ya. I'm going to say Ma gadlu ma'asecha Ya. Me'od amku machshavotecha. Or some of us will just say Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Let us praise. So join as you're comfortable. Page 22, you have 2 options. Top of 342, if you want to flip pretty far, or 22 in the middle, just up from the indented lines, 4 lines up from there. Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah, 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 Magadu, Masechaya,
Hallelujah.
Me'odamku machshavotecha.
Hallelujah.
Magadu Masechaya.
Hallelujah.
Me'odamku machshavotecha. Magadu Masechaya. Machshavotecha. Magadu Masechaya. Me'odamku machshavotecha. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Does anyone in the room or in the Zoom room have a wow moment that you'd be willing to share with us? It doesn't have to be a big wow moment. It could be a small moment in the week that has passed that perhaps you can connect with to experience that sense of awe. Esther made a friendship bracelet in Art Lab. That's wonderful. Anyone else? Spence. She has what? A birthday. Mazel tov to Rachel, right? Mazel tov. Anyone else on the Zoom? Let's see. Chat. Please, Susan. Oh. Yeah.
Finally.
So well
Finally.
said. The temperature drop. Wow. That was amazing. Yes. So wonderful. And let's see. I don't see any on the chat, but do you, Josh, or you, Rabbi Jen, have any wow moments to share? I'll give you a moment to think while I share mine. Well, it's amazing that you can fly thousands of miles and just go across the ocean and be in Israel one day and be in the United States the next. I will never stop feeling awe about the miracle of flight. And to be able to see parts of the world that are so far away and to be there, and just so grateful that we were there and back safely. You're up, guys. Come on.
My top moment is just every Friday singing outside with these kids.
With the
Yeah.
kids.
And every Shabbat.
It's quite a
even
scene.
when they have dirt in their mouth.
Josh on the
they're still having a good
playground
time.
with the preschoolers here is something to see.
He is a rock star, truly.
They think he is. They think he is on the level of, I don't know, Prince
Oh,
or something.
wow. I'll take it.
Okay.
Honestly, when we got in here to do a sound check
Oh.
and we were all singing together for the first time, like this week, it felt really good, and it still feels really special to be able to sing in person with people.
Absolutely. I'm into that. Okay, well, I am going to share a few words of Torah. We've moved our Devar Torah up. We're experimenting. So I'll share a few words of Torah in between Kabbalat Shabbat and the Ma'ariv service, mostly to make sure everyone's still awake. No, not really. No one falls asleep when I talk, right? No. Okay. So here's just a small question. What has enabled the Jewish people to survive for millennia against unbelievable odds? So you might have some things that come to mind. Do any spring to mind when I ask that question? What has enabled us to survive, Catherine?
My first gut answer was
Shabbat. Okay.
and my second answer was study.
Shabbat and study. Great. Thank you. Anything else come up for folks when just without thinking too much about it, Lori? Stubbornness. I love it. Feel free to chime in the chat if anyone on Zoom has a thought about this. So we have stubbornness, study, and Shabbat. Spence?
Catherine said, continuing tradition that carried on from one family to the next family,
Continuing
Instead of
tradition.
tradition, in the sense of your Judaism.
Yes. Continuing our traditions, our rituals. Okay. Esther. Hope. Great. Susan.
I like hope, but I
Okay.
was gonna say a really good story.
Oh, a really good story. What wonderful responses. So this question was very much on my mind this summer as I traveled in Israel for 2 weeks with my family. And before that, spent 10 days in Jerusalem without my family, immersing in study and reflection about the Jewish state and its past and its future. Ever since my first experience of Israel in the spring of 1995, during my junior year of college in the city of Beersheba in the Negev desert, I've been struck by the emotional landscape of the land and the country, the culture, and the society of Israel, as much as I've been struck by the physical landscape. The words emotional landscape always come to me when I think about both Israel and the Jewish people, and I'll hopefully explain a little bit about why. Does it sound okay? Okay. It's always seemed to me, and for those who've heard me say this before once or 100 times, forgive me, but it's always seemed to me that Israel lives life with the volume turned up. Sorrows are deeply felt, joys are felt so fully and completely. Now, of course, to be human is to experience great sorrow and great joy. That's not to say that we don't feel things so deeply, even if we don't live in Israel. But whenever I've spent time in Israel, the way the emotions come across in a communal sense and are manifested in the life of society in Israel seems always to reflect a kind of fullness that really has always resonated with me and has felt different to me from life in the US? Was it because the Jewish people and the Jewish state have never known life without existential vulnerability? Was it because there never really has been the privilege of taking safety, security, ongoing joy, and good fortune for granted? In our post 9/11 world, and certainly now as we experience a global pandemic for nearly 2.5 years, I don't think that we can accurately say that our American society is less familiar with vulnerability than Israel is. But what might it be that is integrally woven into our people that creates the sense of a more vivid emotional landscape? In this period of the Jewish calendar, the emotional landscape with its peaks and valleys is starkly laid before us. As I mentioned earlier, last Saturday night until Sunday night was the observance of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of the month of Av. Now, I need to clarify that this year, the 9th day of the month of Av actually fell the previous day on Shabbat. But you can't observe Tisha B'Av, our rabbis taught, a day of deep mourning on Shabbat. So when the 9th of Av falls on a Shabbat, the observance of Tisha B'Av is moved to the next day. So we observe the 9th of Av actually on the 10th of Av. That's a day of mourning, of fasting, in commemoration, in mourning for the destruction of the ancient temples in Jerusalem, but also other catastrophes of Jewish history have been overlaid onto this day as well. But this day, Tisha B'Av, this sad, mournful day, doesn't come out of nowhere, though it does stand in sharp contrast to that summer vibe of barbecues and beach time and vacation. Tisha B'Av follows a 3-week period of semi-mourning with customs that we take on in times of mourning for many reasons, including our own personal mourning for those we've loved. And the last 9 days of those 3 weeks are an even more intense mourning period, traditionally. The intensity builds, and then we come to Tisha B'Av, and we're asked to dwell inside a deep pain, to really acknowledge the hole in the world that was left when our people experienced the loss of their center, their spiritual home, their communal center. And this day doesn't just come and go. Not only do we lead up to it, but we journey from it. It's part of an emotional arc. The mourning, the coming, panim el panim, face to face, is followed immediately the next Shabbat, which is right now that we've just entered into. This Shabbat is called Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat of comfort. It's named after the words of the prophet Isaiah that we read in our Haftorah reading this week, and in the weeks that follow, we read words of comfort. And this week, the words we read are Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami. Comfort, comfort my people. We get 7 weeks of an emotional journey in which we've gone to the deep place. We have dwelled inside of the hurt. And we then become open to receive words of comfort as they're given to us in the Haftorah for each of these 7 weeks. 7 probably sounds to you like a familiar number when it comes to Jewish customs and traditions. Right. Shabbat is the 7th day. Shemitah, the sabbatical year, the 7th year that we're in now. The 7 weeks from Passover to Shavuot. The 7 blessings at a wedding. 7 is never a coincidence in our tradition, a very intentional number. And when we've gone through 7 weeks after Tisha B'Av, what do we have? Do you know? Think about where we are in the calendar. Rosh Hashanah. Yeah, It's, believe it or not, going to be Rosh Hashanah in 7 weeks. So what is it about coming face to face with unimaginable catastrophe, deep despair, the sense of a total uprooting, total upheaval, both physical and spiritual, when the temples were destroyed, that feeling of vulnerability, feeling unmoored and hopeless? Why do we need to experience this in order to experience the vastness of the comfort that follows? Or do we? Do we need to experience the lowest lows in order to have the capacity to take in words of comfort? And why might we need the experience of despair and hope, catastrophe and comfort before we arrive at a new year? I pose these questions knowing that the emotional arc of that mourning period in the middle of summer, followed by the 7 weeks of consolation, are not necessarily on the radar screens of most Jews outside of Orthodox communities. It may be something you're familiar with and have experienced, and it may not. But even if we don't personally observe it, I'm wondering about the power of the fact that our tradition lays out for us this emotional arc that contains within it the depth of loss, inhabiting that space of vulnerability, and that experience of comfort. So how might we dip into that? How might we connect with it? What can we draw out from this rich tradition of confronting despair and catastrophe head on? Hearts broken, wide open, and then open to receive comfort and new hope as we move into a new year. Our tradition is very realistic. It's truly, in my understanding, one of the greatest gifts of Jewish tradition. We do not sweep emotion under the rug, and we're known for that culturally, right? That's a stereotype. All our families and experiences are different, but if you had to paint with a broad brush and think of one of the stereotypes of Jews, you would say, well, we don't tend to repress our emotions, right? Our tradition really gives us the gift of delving into the whole spectrum, the breadth and depth of human emotion that we all experience in our individual lives. And I wonder about the comfort that can be found in a tradition that gives us the opportunity to have that sort of emotional landscape that we're walking through, that we may not align in our individual emotional lives with the emotional life of the Jewish calendar. But I just want to leave you with this question of what might it give us if we were to dip into it a little bit? You might experience it with the new year and with the season of return and repentance. Perhaps you do get into that emotional space individually. But what I'm trying to draw out is that there's so much more that precedes it. And I've mentioned to you many times, but I'm going to say it again. There's a wonderful book that describes exactly this by Rabbi Alan Lew, L-E-W, of blessed memory, called This Is Real, and You Are Completely Unprepared. If you haven't read it after all these 5 years I've been mentioning it, please read it. It's such an accessible book, and it explains better than I ever could this idea of the emotional landscape of our people. So there's some wisdom in needing to really break open our pleas, our despair. Echa, that's the name of the book of Lamentations that we chant on Tisha B'Av. Echa, how? How can this be? How can this be? In order to experience the spacious relief of comfort, nachamu, nachamu ami. Now, every Shabbat nachamu, we read the Torah portion, Va'et Hanan. And Va'et Hanan is famous for containing the Shema within it, but also it begins with Moses heartbroken, pleading with God knowing he's already known for quite a while, he is not going to get to go into the land with the people. That was his punishment for striking the rock way back when. And now he's face to face with it. And it hurts so much. And you could hear Moshe's hurt. Ve'et Hanan, from the root Hanan, graciousness. Please have grace. Be gracious with me. Pleading, all of the sense of pleading, of grace, really of despair and heartbreak. So that also aligns with Shabbat Nachamu. So we somehow, just as on Passover, we're asked to see ourselves as if we ourselves had left Egypt. On Tisha B'Av and those mourning days around it, we're asked to see ourselves as people anticipating a great catastrophe as the walls of the city are breached, and that the temple will soon be destroyed, and then to dwell within that searing pain. And there's great wisdom in a tradition that doesn't tell us, get over it, the pain is over, time heals all wounds. No, we have to cycle back again and again and again and experience it, not because we're gluttons for punishment, but because that's a way forward into being able to experience the rest of the emotional landscape, the breadth of human emotion and experience that includes comfort and consolation. So I just want to leave you with the blessing that you may be able to experience in these weeks that follow and in the new year ahead, perhaps a bit of new spaciousness. We're living in a painful time communally, needless to say, on so many levels, and we might be tempted to just shut it out. But if we let it in, perhaps we can break our hearts open to the other aspects of our emotional landscape, comfort and consolation, and that will give us the strength to reach out to one another. Shabbat Shalom. So with that, we're going to walk across a bridge into our Ma'ariv service with Baruch Hu. And those of you who are joining on live stream and Zoom, you are a part of our minyan here. You count. This community is connected here in the chapel and across, in some cases, thousands of miles throughout various states and places in the world together, and ask ourselves and each other, are we ready to pray? And we turn to page 28 for Baruch Hu. Please rise as you are able. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Amborach Leolam Va'ed.
Ma'avir Yom u'mevi Laila u'mavdil ben Yom u'ben Laila Adonai tzevot Shemo El Chai ve'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Amariv Aravim.
On page 32, you may be seated. On page 32, we come to the Ahavat Olam blessing. As Rabbi Berkman mentioned earlier, this Shabbat also marks the 15th of Av, Tu B'Av, commonly known as something of a Jewish Valentine's Day, at least in Israel. And it's a celebration of love. And that overlays this particular blessing that we have the opportunity to recite every Shabbat and every day if you choose to. Invoking the notion that all of creation was created out of an act of chesed, of love. The love that God has for us as God's creations through a process known as tzimtzum, this cosmic retraction of a piece of God's self to make space for something else, for the possibility of us coming into being, in this world coming into being. And on Tu B'Av, when we recognize the myriad of different iterations of love in our lives, whether it be romantic love, platonic love, of friendship, parental love, or just the love and compassion that we hope to muster and express to our neighbors, to the planet. All of these are opportunities for us to pull back a little of ourselves, to suppress our own egos, to not take up as much space so that we might make room for that possibility of being in relationship. So on page 32, Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Avta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta, Al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shochbeinu, Uvkumeinu nasiach bechukecha, V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, U'b'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed, Ki hem chayenu, Ve'orech yameinu, Uvahem negei yomam v'layla, negei yomam v'layla, Be'ahavatcha al tasir, Mimenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev amo Yisrael, Ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Page 36.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתיכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם.
We'll turn to page 40 for our blessing for redemption, remembering our people's experience of crossing into freedom and out of slavery. Mi chamocha, page 40.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar lakodesh, nora tehilot, osefele, nora tehilot, osefele, malchutecha ra'u vanecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, ze eli anu ve'amru Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Hayir 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 hayir
So we're going to move towards the Amidah. We're going to begin with another, it's a bit of a psalm, Adonai Sfatai Tiftach. We always say before the Amidah, God, open our lips that we might be able to express what ultimately is inexpressible, but we'll do our best. We'll use the words handed down to us from tradition. We'll blend them with the words that sit in our hearts today. So we'll begin the Amidah on page 46. And I invite you to rise as you are able, body or spirit.
Yada Adonai, Zevatai Tiftach, Ufi Agi, Tehilatecha.
Page 48, we'll chant the first three blessings aloud and we'll make some space for individual prayer after that, followed by prayer for peace.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon. Gomel chasadim tovim, v'konei hakol, v'zocher chasei avot v'imahot, u'mevi geula livnei v'neihem, lema'an shem ho'ei ahava, melech ozer u'moshia u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah, page 50. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atah rav lehoshia, Morid hatal, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verafeh cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha b'gevurot, Umido melech, Melech meimit umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman ata l'chayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei hakol, page 52. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, U'kadoshim b'chol yom ya'alucha selha, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el hakadosh.
Continue individually. Page 62, beginning with Yehi L'Ratzon, continuing through Oseh Shalom, and you may be seated as you've completed your individual prayer.
Yehu L'Ratzon, Imrei fi, Ve'yon libi, Lefanecha, Adonai, Tzuri, Tzuri, Legoali, Oseh Shalom.
take a moment to pray for those who are in need of healing of body or spirit, refuat haguf or refuat nefesh. We'll sing together in the middle of page 253, and I invite you to share names of those for whom you are praying for healing. Those of you on the live stream without access to a chat or when I can't hear your voices, so please do, if you're comfortable, just share the names of those for whom you're praying, even aloud to yourself from wherever you are. I think that there's a lot of power in that. And those of you in the room, is there anyone who would like to mention a name or names? You can raise your hand or rise. Spence. Ken Waller, and some individuals from our community are connected to our community members. Richard Halpern, Karen Landman, Hasia Bat Shalom Vechana, Lindy Lieberman, Joyce Golden, Esther Neshama, Karen Weber, Esther Tzvia Bat Asher V'Nechama, Yisrael Beryl Ben Gela Rachel V'Label Yankel, Naomi Fisher, Naomi Bat Tzipora V'Yosef, Chaim Mesh, Dalia Bat Miriam, Cassandra Warshawski, Chaya Blima Bat Chaim Chia Vasilia Rochel, Jeffrey Colt, Joseph Siegel, Yosef Ben Herschel Verut, and Glenna Bub, Judy Trojan. We pray for healing, page 253. Yisheberach Avoteinu Mekor Habracha Leimoteinu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Yisheberach Imoteinu Mekor Habracha Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. We move toward the conclusion of our service with Aleinu, page 282. Please rise as you are able.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו בגובהי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
Can be seated. Is anyone present in the room observing a yard site, an anniversary of a death, or in a period of mourning for a loved one? Spence. May their memories be for a blessing. And if anyone on Zoom would like to bring any names into our space, those you are remembering today for a yard site, please do so. And those of you on the live stream, again, here too, please do share the name of those for whom you're reciting Kaddish tonight, even if you feel silly because you're not in a space with others. There's great power in that. We really are bound up together in this space of prayer and now of memory. So Mourner's Kaddish is on page 294. And please rise if it is your custom to do so. Yit Gadal, V'yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Bialma divra chirute ve'amlich malchute v'chayechon u'v'yomechon v'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman koriv ve'imru Amen. Yehe Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal Shmei d'kudesha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata, Ta'miran bi'alma ve'imru, Amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru, Amen. We can be seated.
Do you want me to?
Sure.
Great. Shabbat Shalom, y'all. It's really lovely to see everybody here and on Zoom. A few announcements for the community. So next Friday, August 19th, same time, same place, we will be hosting a summer Shabbat and Shmooze at 5 p.m. We will have tacos from Anna's Taqueria outside in the tent. And at 6 p.m., we will have services led by yours truly, Rabbi Jen and Rabbi Berkman, both in the chapel and virtually. And at 7 p.m., back outside for a dessert oneg in the tent. Additionally, we are looking for singers and musicians to join our TOS choir and band. Come play music with me. And you can contact myself, you can come up to us after, or David Spar, our music director, if you are interested. And please be sure to check your newsletters and the TOS website for more information and to register for our in-person events. And at the conclusion of tonight's service, please join us outside for a special Tu B'Av Oneg in our newly erected tent in the parking lot.
So happy to have that tent back. And hopefully we'll have a lot of opportunities. Well, I know we will. We've been planning a lot of opportunities to be out there. I also want to thank Josh Cohen for not only running tech, but also just hopping in with us wherever we need him or want him musically. Just so adaptable and so talented. So yeah, as you can see, our music here at TOS is just reaching ever new heights. And
We're just getting started.
We're just getting started. So thank you for, going with the flow as we teach you some new melodies. We're trying to balance the old with the new, but we're really looking forward to a very musical year. And I also just wanted to flag for you that September 9th, which feels very far away, but isn't at all, is going to be our kind of official welcome back Shabbat that we always do at the beginning of the sort of academic year. We're calling it Shabarbecue. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but it's a Shabarbecue.
I love it. About it.
I was outvoted. It's okay.
Sorry, not
so
sorry.
Shabarbecue. Will be very fun. We'll be in the tent. We'll have a lot of music. We'll have a service, all ages and stages. So please save the date. Okay, we're going to conclude with Kiddush and Motzi, because soon we're going to go outside and eat, and then we'll sing Erev Shoshanim, because it's a love song and it's Tu B'Av. It's Love Day. So Kiddush and Motzi, page 5. Please rise. Rabbi Jen, you want to? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh bereshit ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim ki banu v'charta ve'otanu kidashta im kol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava u'ratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Shabbat Shalom. All right, and while Jen takes a bite of the gluten-free challah.
I can't sing after that. So.
Oh, okay, never mind. She'll do it later. We can be seated. We'll just end with Erev Shoshanim in the spirit of the day. There are the words in our prayer book, page 350. These words come from Shir HaShirim. Erev Shoshanim Esena el habustan Mor besamim ulevona Eraglech miftan Laila yored leat Ruach Shoshan oshma Shir balat zemer shel ha'ava shachar omayona roshef alei tzalim hitel haboker shoshana etzef benani laila yored Shoshan oshva hava elchashlach shir balat zemer shel ha'ava Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.